Has your marketing gone bitter or sour? Sit back and enjoy top shelf strategies from the Search Bar, where we're serving up insights for your digital marketing to work successfully. On today's episode of the Search Bar, we're joined by Janette Berrios, VP of Corporate Marketing at Symphonic Distribution, to discuss how, as one of the first employees of a music distribution company founded by her husband, she successfully grew a marketing department from scratch. Janette, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure here. I'm going to start off with your roots here so that the listeners can get to know you a little bit. So can you tell me about where you're from and where you grew up?
So I'm originally from Puerto Rico, and obviously we're here in Tampa. I've been here in Tampa for almost about 15 years. I've always had an inclination kind of for the arts, particularly, really tight with my art teacher growing up, and
Nice.
in high school, she let me use a lot of the resources and let's say in art class. And I was that person that if you were running for something in school, I was I'm going to help you out in creating
Nice.
posters, for the whole student council and stuff like that. So I think I've always been a promoter of such.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to study marketing, but unfortunately, my parents were like, no, that's not a real career. You have to study one of those big fives, you got to be a doctor, a lawyer, architect and such. So I started in science and biology of all things. And I remember my art teacher back then when I got accepted in college, and she saw that I was going to biology. She was like, biology? You're going to study biology? I don't see you doing biology. And I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of good at it. Eventually I ended up in business school, still studying finance and economics. I do like numbers. And then obviously life brought me here, and that's where I met my husband, that he had this distribution company. And essentially, back then when I started, it was literally 10 years ago, there were so many roles to fill, obviously,
Right, sure.
Being in a small business. But I started, it was essentially kind of doing marketing, helping with reporting. I had my own business as well for a few years. So I understood kind of the hustle, of having your own business. And I didn't have an issue with okay, well, we need to do whatever it takes, whatever we need to do to, get these things done. Then, I'm willing to kind of learn whatever you need to learn, because there's so many resources now online that you can, just learn so much. So I was doing a little bit of marketing, helping with some of the reporting, pitching the music, because we do pitch music to all these different stores, the Spotify's, Apple. We can present our music to those stores so then the artists can get opportunities, within the platform. So I was doing a little bit of that as well. But yeah, obviously throughout this process, I've learned a lot about SEO, obviously, social media, content creation, just a lot of different facets in terms of marketing.
That's amazing, Janette. Thank you for sharing that. You mentioned, definitely a lot of hustle in there, right? I'm sure there's also a lot of grinding as well, kind of going through a lot of things that you kind of had to get through, kind of, being so early on in the company. But it sounds like at an early age, you already knew what you were passionate about, kind of, on the artistic side, on the art side of things, and kind of helping promote there. So just want to dive a little bit deeper into how you went about growing a marketing department there at Symphonic Distribution.
Yeah, so initially when we started, I think the biggest hurdle that I had at first was creating content. I needed let's say a graphic designer. I needed somebody helping me with a website.
Right.
Because those were the days that we were kind of early on, and essentially back then it was Facebook, Instagram had started, but it wasn't picking up as much for businesses. It was still a photography app essentially.
Right.
You remember those days? And then Twitter. So our first move was having a graphic designer, and essentially I started at the company in the summer, and that graphic designer started in December. Okay. Literally and interestingly enough, he's still with the company.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So
great.
So he's he's fam. He's from the OG crew.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, it was I needed somebody for, like I said, for graphic design, because back then, unfortunately, there wasn't Canva. Canva nowadays is a great resource.
Yep.
It can take you pretty far, if you have at least a good understanding of aesthetic and balance and, how, some like an image is done properly, but they give you so many templates. So he was the one that helped us out, obviously now creating a lot of content, and then also the website. I needed to redo the website completely. Yeah. Cause it was a little bit antiquated, it was like, now we look back and we're like, oh my God, cringing. I was like, that was the website. But yeah, like I think, and honestly, like once we redid our website, because obviously then at that point we already understood a little bit more about SEO and, like just, like the basic components of what a page has to have and your keywords and all this. It looked incredible. And like, I remember that was like around 2014. And literally that was a year that we had like an incredible spike. Like everything, like I think like it really turned around for us, like having that web presence.
So you think the website is the main reason you had that big growth?
Yeah. And I really do think like a website is really important. I even was talking to a friend of mine that she just got a business. She started like I don't want to go into detail, but she started a business and she's counting on word of mouth. And I'm like, I think you have to do a website. You definitely have to do it.
Even if it's word of mouth and people hear about you, they're still going to search for you, right? They're going to look for you online. Exactly.
They want to see your work. They, they want to see a little bit more, like even maybe the story about the company. Right. Sometimes people have inclinations to supporting different types of businesses. So, that website is really important. And even going even a little bit back when I had my own business, I had back then Yahoo had like this like Yahoo business kind of portal that you can like build a website, drag and drop, very simple kind of concepts. Mm-hmm. And they also offered you like the email address, like that goes with like the business, like obviously like
makes you look much more legit.
Yeah. And I remember that website also, like people would think that it was a huge company because of the perception of the website.
Yeah.
And yeah, even like when I met my now husband back then when I still had that website running, he's like, wow, this looks really good. Like, it looks like it's like a huge company. So it's a huge, it's like, it's an important piece of a business. Yeah. And being able to and now with, obviously learning techniques with search engine optimization, then people can discover you anywhere,
Yeah, exactly. So you realized early on, I need help kind of with the design, with the graphics. You brought in that person. You realized we need to work on the website, right? Is that, I'm assuming you've just built onto that from there. What other people have you brought into the marketing department?
Yeah, so after that, then I think then the next piece was going to be a social media coordinator, somebody that can then handle the social media. We also had a newsletter that goes along with it. So that was kind of like an important piece for us, and in order to, and we also had expanded into like having other social platforms as well, like other presence in LATAM and other web properties that we had. So I think that was the one that also like.
And tell our audience what's LATAM.
Oh, sorry. It's like Latin America. So like at times it's like shortened into LATAM,
sure.
But yeah, that one was the next piece. And because we work with creators as well, like, musicians and record labels and such, they're also creating a lot of content themselves. Mm-hmm. So for us, it's finding creative ways of like how to maybe create more roundups or like providing opportunities to showcase those artists. Because in that process, then if they get recognized, they probably share the content. A lot of them share the content, and in that process, and then we get more referrals because they're kind of basically giving us more brand awareness through these opportunities. So social media was a really important one. And then after that, we have like a really big focus on education, right? Mm-hmm. Obviously now the independent music sector has grown tremendously because of the access of information. Right. Before, if you were an artist and you wanted your music in any online platform, maybe you wanted your music video on MTV, you had the record labels were the ones that were the gatekeepers of all that information. That
was a long time ago when there was actually music videos on MTV, right? It's been a while.
Yeah. So these these record labels were the gatekeepers. So now there's so much information online, that essentially you can learn how all this works, and how the music makes money and how to collect it. Because beyond just like the music getting streamed on these platforms, there is ways that artists can earn a living from their music. So that was our role to like educate. So that's where also I got in a content writer, somebody that can write me blog posts, about the industry. And in that process, we also use a little bit, we have like two strategies. We use a little bit of SEO in terms of like, okay, what are the must-haves, the content pieces that we need based on the different services that we have? What are the main questions that always have to be answered? But then also take the approach of like, social listening and maybe go to Facebook groups, go to Reddit, all these places that people are having conversations and saying like, what are the questions that they have? Because at times, like I remember in the pandemic, people were looking for like, oh, what are the platforms that you're using to stream your live music? Like shows that people were doing in their own homes. So yeah, we did like, we would do roundup posts of like, hey, these are all the other platforms besides Facebook and Instagram or YouTube to do a live, because there were some that were focused on musicians themselves. So,
all right. Thank you for that, Janette. So next up, we're going to talk about the time to grow here at the search bar. And so I'm just curious, how you became an expert in so many aspects of digital marketing. You've named so many already so early on in the podcast and so many hats that you've worn, so many things there. But throughout your career, how did you pick up all these different aspects of digital marketing?
So I think there's like a twofold. It's like based on the needs, right? Like the business needs and trends, because this is something too that, as you know, all these things change constantly, at least like when it comes to like social media. There's like new platforms that are coming in. How can you apply it to your own business as well? From like obviously like the strategy that you'll have there. What's the tone? What sort of content you're sharing? So I feel like it's been a little bit of like, okay, what comes to the market, right? And for us, musicians, and being in the music industry, musicians, whenever there's a new platform, they are the ones that can use it the quickest, right? In music. Because they can use it in however shape or form, right? They can get creative with it. So I think like being able to learn of all these, like let's say these different aspects in digital marketing, it's because of the need, because I feel like we're in the trenches of like marketing, because artists are so creative themselves and there's so much that goes into their own strategies when releasing albums and projects, right? And how they have to consistently create content. So for us, we're always providing education on how they should be doing that. And when like a new platform comes out or a new feature, like how can they use it? So throughout that process of explaining to them how to use it, then we are constantly also learning too of how all these things operate, because you just have to kind of like stay in the game kind of thing, So it's been really interesting because it's like learning the tools. How do we execute with those tools as well, or those features, that all these, different social media platforms offer, but then also from a business perspective, like we have to market ourselves a little bit different too than, like the musicians. So, we have to learn about SEO. We do a lot of like inbound marketing as well. We use HubSpot also for like our onboarding and that experience for the client. And lead generation through guides as well, and trying to, creating these funnels to obviously get more people through the pipeline, through our pipeline. So it's been, like at least we've had we have a unique position in terms that we work with so many creatives and that they can use all these platforms, to market their music, and through the education, then we've been able to like always, staying relevant, with like, okay, what are the latest tools and how does it work and such.
I love that. So on the one side, you're educating others, right? So your clients and musicians on how to use the tools, and at the same time, you're learning how to use the tools because you have to educate others, right? That's a really unique position to be in there. And so, what has been kind of the? Is there any current trend or kind of a recent trend that you've seen that you can give as an example of kind of where a musician started doing something, you're like, oh, that's really cool, we should be doing that as well?
So I know that this is like, like what's the expression when like lightning hits once, kind of situations, and coincidentally it's something here, a local story, but TikTok, right?
Yes,
TikTok,
of course, yeah.
Obviously even through the pandemic, it blew up, and there is a correlation with you becoming popular in the platform, right? Your music going viral or being used.
Yeah.
And then actually creating streams for the artist. So there's like she was a client of ours. She already now is picked up by a major record label, and her name's Doechii. And her song basically went viral through the pandemic. And it was like a video of these, like a glow up, you know, of you when you were in middle school or elementary school. And now, you know, people love sharing, you know, like, oh, you know, like their glow ups. Yeah. So song went viral. And I love, like, particularly what I love about her story is that it's like the industry came knocking and she showed up. Because, you know, sometimes these can be like one hit wonders that it's like, oh, will the person have, you know, the drive, the motivation, the creativity to kind of continue that, you know, like lead that path still. And she, like, I consider her, she's an entertainer. You know, she's like not only, obviously, she's a great songwriter, but then also like she's just a performer. You know, she's an artist in general. So, she's now, you know, like been charted in Billboard. She has performed in BET Awards. She played in Coachella. You know, she's have like huge drive, and she always represents Tampa a lot. You know, like they kind of like gave her now like the name of like she's the swamp princess. You know, like so we're considered Tampa's like a swamp. You know, so they've done a lot of visuals around that. She was also in Jimmy Fallon and everything. So she's
That's fantastic.
Yeah, so I feel like I know it's different. You know, in terms of like okay, like a business and how that can apply, but I feel like it's definitely paying attention to, you know, like paying attention to these different platforms and something like TikTok, you know, depending on the type of business that somebody might have. And, you know, it's different type of content, right? But at least like key things that I would say there is like, you know, for any business, it's like not being afraid of creating content there. And like, obviously it's a specific audience, right? We know that it's like a younger audience that's going to be there. But if you feel that there's a fit, you know, for your business to be in TikTok, go for it. And making sure that, you know, like we actually were able to talk to like one of the reps there at TikTok, and they explained to us like a little bit of like how the algorithm works and, you know, best practices. Nice. And at least like our biggest takeaway is that whenever, you know, whatever type of content you're creating, to be consistent with that type of content, you know, not to mix it up too much. Because I know that, for instance, like there can be like funny things that you can do, like let's say the trends and all that stuff, but they are a platform that, number one, they don't want to be associated with dancing.
Oh, interesting.
They're trying to like
pivoting away from that.
They do not want that to become a dancing app. Right. You know, so so knowing that, think that it's like, okay, we don't have to always be in the trend and be doing dances because that's not even what their algorithm is like going to be condoning, number one. And for us, like we, you know, like we ourselves are kind of like navigating it and learning a little bit more about it. But ideally it cannot be, you know, like if you want to do funny content and maybe like the business that you're in can be funny, then go for it. You know, like do the funny stuff. And the algorithm will pick up that, oh, you're a funny person in podcasts, or you're a funny person in XYZ, whatever it is. Right, you know, like that you're an entertainer. But, you know, if you're going to educate, then educate. Everything should be education. So it doesn't kind of like mix up your algorithm thinking that it's like, oh, you do funny things and you do this. And no, you have to stick to one type of content is what they recommend. That's fantastic. That's such a great piece of advice, right? Knowing that like kind of TikTok is kind of pivoting away from the trends and the dance and the funny stuff to, you know, if you're talking about one thing, keep talking about that. If you're making videos about one thing, keep making those videos. And I feel like that even applies no matter where your marketing is. Once you start building that audience expects certain things from you, and you want to continue to give them that and kind of be consistent there. So it's really interesting that it almost seems like TikTok's kind of maturing in that way there. Yeah. No, and literally, like, for us, like, what we're now going to be doing is, like, okay, we want to, obviously, they want you to be creating a lot of video content in there, but our strategy there is, like, at least 4 videos, you know, 4 videos a week, and at least if we can't push out the 4, 3 of them have to be educational, and 1 is a trend, you know, to still it be, like, more balanced into, like, the educational stuff. Got it. Okay, so so TikTok takeaways, 4 videos a week, and make them consistent. Yeah, ideally, if you're going to stick to a type of video, is it a how-tos, then stick to how-tos. If you're going to be, I don't know, doing funny videos about your specific industry or little scenarios that happen, then stick to that. But just stick to one type of piece of content. I like to still balance it out because, you know, it's nice to, like, every now and then, you know, jump into something if it's relevant, you know, and you can think of something funny to do with, like, a trend that's going on, but stick to one thing. Yeah, you said the key word there, relevant, right? You don't want to force something, right? Just because other people are doing it, you don't need to do it. Exactly.
Makes sense. Awesome. Well, thank you, Janette. That was awesome. Let's get into some barrels of wisdom, as we say here on the search bar. So it's the name of the podcast. And so my favorite question is, what's the last thing that you search for in your search bar, Janette?
I'm going to switch it up, and I'm not going to do a search bar, like your traditional Google,
Okay.
but because I think like now I've replaced Google with ChatGPT.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So now we even at the office, we have a name for it. It's Theo, like uncle chat, Theo chat.
Chad, I love that.
Yeah, no, honestly, even being completely transparent, obviously, like we were just here and we were thinking about, oh, what should my mixtape name be for marketing or whatever.
Yeah.
So I looked it up and there was like, it gives you some ideas.
Right.
Recently, I'm going to be hosting or Symphonic is going to be hosting, it's like our annual festival, like a music festival. And it's going to be an e-board, crowbar. And I created my sponsorship deck, right? Like with the about and the different sponsorship tiers. And I was like, okay, so, and in that sponsorship tier, in the sponsorship deck, I have like, okay, who's the audience? Who comes to this like festival? So top attendee are college students, right? Mm-hmm. So I went to ChatGPT and I was like, okay, what are the top local companies that have college students as an audience? Which that would be traditionally something that I would look up in Google.
Right. Yeah.
But ChatGPT is going to write me a little article explaining me each of the different companies and what do they do. So I found a couple of companies there that I'm like, okay, I can reach this, I can reach out to these people, like look them up on, so I found like, for instance, it's a bank that has banking, alternatives and loans and stuff for college students. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to reach out to these people. Yeah. It helped me out. But
that's great.
But I did want to, talk about ChatGPT because as a marketer, it's a great, great tool. I even joke in the, obviously we joke around. It's like, I think I'm like a sponsor, for him. I'm like an influencer, for ChatGPT because there's so many things that you can do with it. Like from like, obviously creating content, right? Let's say you're a marketer and you need to create blog posts, for your company. It's a great tool that you ask, you can ask any question and it's going to give you almost like an article almost written, for you. We have a content writer and she does a lot of research, but I've told her, hey, go into ChatGPT. It's totally fine, and look up because there might be a couple of little extra points, right? Little points that you haven't been able to come up with. Even for ads, for ad copy, it's great too. Like I've literally have punched in there, I need to create 4 ads that have this amount of characters that are for musicians and producers, record labels and artists promoting XYZ services. And it will spit you out literally, okay, image 1, producer in a studio. And then it says stuff that, again, it'll give me the copy.
Right.
There was even one, because like I normally with our ads, we'll normally do like, you have like your somebody singing something in the studio, like maybe somebody in a concert, like watching somebody. Yeah. But it gives you sometimes, it'll give you little ideas that I was like, oh, wow, I've never thought about this. Because one of them was just people in a dance floor. It said people in a dance floor. I'm like, dance floor,
Yeah.
And then
what does that mean?
And then the copy was, bring your music to a larger audience. Because still, like you want your music to be played in clubs and, so as a marketer, I think like, whenever these tools come around, it's like maximize them, you can use them for a lot of things. Like even, I can tell you back to back so many stuff. Like I literally, South by Southwest, we participate, we attend that conference in Austin. Yeah. And recently they had, you can submit panel ideas, right? Right. So I literally put in there, give me panel ideas for music distribution, for publishing, sync, all the services that we offer. Yeah. It gave me, several ideas. There was one that sounded very South by, because I told ChatGPT that's for South by Southwest, Yeah. And it gave me one, it's like building long-term campaigns for your music, long-term campaigns. Yeah. It's like a long-term campaign. That's different, Right. I submitted, it got picked. And it was from ChatGPT.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so I'm a fan. So I think, that's like a recommendation. Now I don't go to Google as much. I'll go to I'll go to ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Theo Chat.
TheoChat. I love that name. So many awesome things you said there, right? And I love what direction you kind of took that question with the search bar, right? For traditional search for SEOs, it's scary, right? Because now people aren't going to Google, Bing, whatever's out there to find. They want to have a conversation. They want to have a more long form answer versus just 10 blue links to click on, right?
Yeah.
So I think that was a great way to kind of answer that question. And also, don't be afraid to lean in to ChatGPT, right? To use it. It's a tool, and as marketers, you want to take advantage of what those tools are, right? When TV started, you would have been stupid to not put ads on TV and used a visual medium going from radio to TV. And I think the same thing with ChatGPT. You're stupid if you're not using it to some extent, right? Of course, there's it's still early on, right? And but it can already do so much early on. So where do you think it's going to be? Where do you think it's going? Do you have any idea of where we're going to be like in a year or two with ChatGPT or AIs like that?
Yeah, it's such an interesting kind of world, and even for us, in music distribution, like things move so quickly, and we're, because we're technically also tech, we're in the tech space as well. And it's like 3 years, like literally, I think maybe at this point it's 4 years ago, but 4 years ago when Spotify started, there were people even hesitant to putting their music on Spotify because we were in that we saw that change from like download to streaming.
Right.
So we were
big deal.
We were there in that piece. Wow. So, and when Spotify started, everyone was like, oh, who knows? We loved it. The people that, like we were in the music industry. So we're like, oh, this is great. You can have access to all this free music. And, obviously you pay for, but it's like nothing, you pay $10 a month, for it. So it was like, it was pretty inexpensive. So, and back then nobody wanted to, like upload the music, and now everybody wants to get featured and be in the playlist, then that's the only thing that people talk about, like being on Spotify. So now with this AI, I'm super interested in seeing like what comes about, because not a lot of people are using it yet. There's some people that are now, they're sold, because like now you can make music with AI, graphic design. That's another thing too. Like even an example, like we've been using like an AI tool that Adobe has. And essentially like, any sort of image, let's say somebody gives you an image and you're like, wow, I wish this image were longer, because I need it to be longer or wider, whatever it may be. Yeah. And now there's AI tools that complete you the image.
Oh, wow.
Like literally, like, and this is an example that just happened to us. Cause like we did a photo shoot, with our merch that we wanted to start using, like, like pictures with our logo in it, artists and such. And literally we had one picture that we loved, and it could have been like the picture for the main site, the front page, but I needed it to be longer, wider.
Yeah.
And it was longer. So AI helped us build all around it.
Wow. It completed the picture.
It completed the picture the size that I needed it. So I think there's going to be a lot of, like whether, from like the content creation piece of like writing, research is going to be different, because I feel there's going to be a wealth of information out there. I do feel that it's still like those AI tools are still learning, because like you can't just like nowadays like, oh, blog post, I'm just going to copy paste it, in here. Like there still needs to be a personalization to it.
Right.
And especially when it comes to like, let's say when you have a blog, you kind of have to like, do link building and add links and, like just certain different things that you have to do. I think for the content creation piece, like visual piece, I feel like that's going to advance a lot too. So any sort of image that you may need, like I secretly think like you will be able to type into something like Canva and be like, I need an image that this and that with a person that does this, and that it might be spitting it out for you.
I think we're almost there. I mean, I've seen it before, where you're giving the input and you're getting an image out of it. Just it looks really maybe wonky or janky, whatever you want to call it now, but it's getting better by the day.
Exactly.
It's crazy how quickly it's learning and evolving there.
So I think that that we'll be able to like, marketers will be able to create ads, like maybe you don't even have to do a photo shoot. I don't want the guy right here.
Don't say that too loud. Yeah.
No, but yeah, you know, like maybe you don't have to do a photo shoot.
Right.
You know, like maybe you can just like go and
Just
be like,
generate
hey,
it,
I
right?
need a person that looks like this, that has a shirt that has my logo, that is in a forest, that is whatever.
Yeah.
Then you can tell it exactly what it's gonna do, you know, like do or be. I've been hearing now or reading now that with these AI tools, or particularly, let's say ChatGPT, what people have to get better at how to ask the question.
Right.
You
The
know?
prompt. Right?
Like,
That's the key. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think like when, like, if I can say like from when I first started using it until now, I've gotten way better at it, you know, at asking the right question, you know, because sometimes you forget one little detail. It's like, what they spit
I needed
out.
this many characters
Yeah.
or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Or like, for instance, I told you that example of like when I was looking for ideas for like companies to reach out to for the sponsorship.
Yeah.
I put like, okay, I had put originally, I had put Tampa companies, right? I put Tampa companies, you know, that tailor to college students, right? But when I put Tampa companies, then it gave me big companies. And I was like, I don't want like, you know, I can't talk to Bank of America or Walmart, you know, it's like, I need the local person, you know, like the local business, you know, and I added local Tampa, you know, and that's when it gave me the right, you know, like then the right answer. And that tends to happen a lot. So it's like, I think people are going to be able to master a little more, similar like how it's happened too with like Google, that traditionally in Google, you know, like let's say for us, it was like music distribution, but now people are like music distribution that focuses on electronic hip hop dance, you know.
People switch up their search queries, right?
Yeah.
Understand, you know, if I'm Googling pizza, I think that Google's gotten smarter too. When you used to Google pizza, the first 5 were like pizza.com, the Wikipedia definition of it, and Domino's.com. And then Google realizes, wait a minute, if someone's searching pizza, they want to get pizza delivered. They want that local pizza
near
shop.
Me.
Right, exactly. Near me. And so it's interesting kind of see, you know, how that's happening on the ChatGPT front as well, that it's, you know, maybe it's going to start asking you questions, Janette. It's like, hey, did you mean local or did you mean big Tampa here? You know,
no, and I just, when I was messing with it, and I recommend this to any, you know, like, let's say a listener or even somebody that's starting a business, like I literally asked it, I was like, just for curiosity, I was like, build me a marketing plan.
Sure.
You know, for Symphonic Distribution. Yeah. And it says, do you have some times for me to ask you some questions?
Oh, nice.
And it was gonna, you know, and it started asking me some questions, but then I was like, you know, I was like, I don't, you know, like I was like,
a little much.
Yeah, because I was like, do I want to put all this effort and then it tell me things that I already know? You know, maybe when I have an intern or something, I'll be like, hey, answer all these questions, because it was like a lot, you know. Right. But for somebody that's starting out, absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, like why not? You know, I'm sure it's going to provide you ideas that you
so many different applications.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think we dove really deep into ChatGPT, which I think was awesome, right? And kind of how it can be used. And I think the number one takeaway for a listener is just try it out, right? Just get your hands dirty, lean in, figure it out. It's here to stay, right? Yeah. It's not going away. We're going to have to learn how to use it as marketers.
Yeah, that's a great tool.
Cool. So I'm going to pivot a little bit to the artists, right? Because we talked about earlier, you guys help out artists to promote themselves. Do you have any tips right now of how artists can stay ahead of any trends in the industry or what's working right now?
So I would say for musicians and artists in general, like I think it's important to like find some sort of publication that is your go-to, you know, for like staying up to date and trends. Obviously I'm going to be biased, but you know, for us, blog.symphonic.com, we really do have a great blog, to the extent that at times, like we were even talking about this like this week, I'll go to conferences and people will come over and be like, wow, Janette, the blog, it's so great. Your newsletter, you know, like
that's such a great compliment.
Yeah. Like literally like not too long ago, I was in Puerto Rico, first person that I see. They're like, oh, how are you, by the way? The blog. They're always talking about the blog and the newsletter. And yeah, so I feel like it's to stay afloat is like you have to find your publication, whether it's one or two, to stay ahead, you know, like knowing what's going on. I do it too personally. Like I have my go-to, you know, websites that I like to, you know, like visit. Yeah. One of them is like a Social Media Examiner. I don't know if you've ever like seen that. Social Media Examiner. I think they're really great. Later.com, which is like that link in bio company. They basically run link in bio. It's called Later.com. Okay. And they have a they have a great blog that always stays afloat with like Instagram and TikTok, you know, because obviously this link in bio concept always goes in, you know, in platforms like that. but I think they do a great job. So I think it's like, yeah, knowing, having, it's you in this industry, like you have to just constantly be learning, essentially. You have to be willing to learn and grow and stay relevant. Those are the people that kind of stay afloat.
Don't stay stagnant.
Yeah, the moment that you're comfortable, there's a problem.
Gotcha.
I always kind of feel that it's like the moment that you feel like, oh, I'm doing okay, and you stay, then you stay stagnant. Then you're like, oh, I think things are good.
Right.
Then that's when
you're
the problem.
in danger.
Yeah. That's when the problem is going to begin. Mm-hmm.
Janette, thank you for sharing all that for the artists. Kind of staying down that path there. Are there any upcoming events that you can share here with us?
So we're in the planning stages now. We're going to be probably announcing in the next couple of days our one-day music festival. It's called Vibes of the Bay. It's going to be September 30th. It starts at 4 p.m. until 1 a.m. And it's always like a great event for us because like we really like to showcase like all the local musicians that are like the ones like killing it, the best ones. Yeah. And it's all different genres, so you're going to see, from folk to bomba y plena, dance music, rock, hip hop, a little bit of everything. And we try to it's almost like we go by BPMs, like from like slower to slower to the more let's say more lively stuff. Yeah.
A little bit of everything.
Yeah. And there's food, there's a market as well. We also are going to have like a live painter, which we're going to auction out a piece. We always have a cause that goes, along with it. Yeah. So this year, our cause is going to be the Arts Conservatory for Teens. They're out of St. Pete. It's a great organization. They promote, like music and arts, theater, dancing. So really happy to be able to support that organization. But yeah. September 30th, save a date, 4 p.m. at Crowbar in Ybor.
Crowbar in Ybor. Sounds like a lot of fun.
It's a great time. It really is a great time.
All right, awesome. So let's get to the perfect pour. We sent you a Mad Libs, a.k.a. Fill in the Blanks, story to help create a marketing mixtape for up-and-coming artists. I want to see what you came up with.
So the name of the mixtape is going to be Conversion Disco.
Conversion Disco. Okay, so bringing back disco.
Yes.
Donna Summers and everything.
Yeah, because you got to have fun. It's got to be groovy. And you got to focus on conversions. Because I think sometimes we get, people can get carried away and just creating content just because you think, oh, this is going to be a good piece of content or whatever it may be, let's say in social media. But at the end of the day, you have a goal, so you have to make sure that that whatever type of content you're putting out is being receptive, right? And that it's being receptive and it's bringing you in the most conversion, whatever that may be in your industry.
I love that. Keeping that front and center, that focus. What are the goals? Yeah. Not just creative for creative sakes, not just content for content's sake, but actually helpful, right? That's answering people's questions that they then convert and whatever and do whatever you want them to do.
And I think the content pieces will speak to if you. It depends on let's say what type of tools you have, right, for monitoring and reporting. We personally use Sprout Social. I think it's a great tool. Gives you a lot of reporting. I love too that they also have a competitor analysis that you can plug in other your competitors, different platforms.
See what they're doing.
And see what's working for them, essentially as well. So I think that's important, conversions. Setting up your goals in Google, because now, you can set up goals if there's a specific landing page that you want, that represents a conversion for you, whatever that may be. And monitoring that, and whatever it's working out, then, continue replicating it and, pivot.
I love that. So Conversion Disco is the name of the mixtape. What are the 2 ingredients for this mixtape?
So they're going to be consistency and creativity.
Nice.
Yeah. I think the biggest one to me, even when I always look back and let's say me in this role with this company, or even it can apply to many things, but I feel like it's really important to be consistent, to stay consistent. Sure. I feel like at times I've seen that people you try something out a couple of times, let's say you did it 3 or 4 times, it didn't work. you don't know yet if it's working or not. You got to give it time, you know, like, and be patient. And it can apply in so many things, because it's like, you got to be consistently learning. You got to be consistency. Like if you have these different social media platforms, like you have to be consistent, you know, like in your posting, you know? So, and I always like, I saw this like little quote once in one of those little desk calendars that I got once,
right.
You know,
okay.
And I always steal this line, but I truly believe in it. It's like, a drop of water every day can make a hole in a stone. So you got to be consistent, you know, and that applies with a bunch of stuff. Like if you want to work out and you want to be in shape, you got to be consistently working out, you know, like, it's like, I think it's like you can apply it for everything. And then I put in also, you know, it's being creative, you know, like creation or whatever, because I think at times, like, you have to have fun with it. You know, like we are here creating things, creating different pieces of content, whatever it may be, to bring people in. So it's like being creative and have fun with it. You know, I think it's like part of my role here too is like, I am creating content, you know, like I am a content creator essentially, just like in different forms. Right. And you know, being also, you know, particular about how it looks, you know, like the feel, like, you know, like branding is very important as well. But I feel like it's that, just like being consistent and being creative, you know.
That's fantastic ingredients. And I think, you know, that really creates an awesome, we usually say wine bottle, but we're doing a mixtape today, right, with Symphonic there. So just curious, this blend that you came up with, that mixtape, who's it best for?
So I think I'm going to say that it's for marketers, but it can be also for like entrepreneurs too, you know?
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, because like you always have to, you know, be consistent, you know, like whether it's like staying afloat with like the trends in your industry or whatever specific industry you're in. You know, you have to be, I feel like when you are in business, you have to be open enough to be a constant learner, you know, because like you just have to always, I don't know, keep learning, you know, so whether it's like about your industry or for personal development, it's always, you know, it's going to be important. And so, yeah. And then marketers, you know, like having fun with it, you know, like have fun with it, essentially, you know, when it comes to like being creative, that it's totally fine to explore. Obviously, I know that, you know, with companies, different companies have different guidelines and restrictions of where you can take that brand. But I feel like now more than ever, people, you know, in this new generation that's coming up, you know, like Gen Zs, like they can smell if something's not real. So I feel like
authenticity
and humanizing the brand, you know, and sometimes like taking, you know, the curtain down, you know, is not a bad thing, you know.
Kind of getting that peek behind the scenes.
Yeah.
How the sausage is made.
Yep.
I love that. So, very cool. Well, I think that was really the perfect pour. Janette, thank you for joining us here on the Search Bar. It's a pleasure having you on as a guest. Again, September 30th, 4 p.m., Crowbar, Ybor City, right?
Yep, Vibes of the Bay.
Vibes of the Bay.
It has also been awarded by Creative Loafing the best local music event.
Wow.
So you got to check it out.
I'll be there. I hope everybody else joins in as well.
Yeah.
So thank you again, and cheers to you. Cheers to everyone listening. Thank you so much for joining us all at the Search Bar. You can connect with Janette and myself on LinkedIn and follow along with our journeys. We'll add the links to connect with us directly in the episode description. And of course, if you have any SEO or digital marketing questions, reach out to me directly on LinkedIn. As the CEO of Digital Neighbor, you can probably tell I love talking about all these topics, marketing, SEO, everything that's out there. And we hope we filled your glass with digital wisdom, and we'll see you real soon on the next episode of the Search Bar. Thank you.